I need you to marry my mama. Bad men are going to kill her. Bad men are going to kill her.
I don't marry anyone, especially not on the recommendation of children who break into my
Please, you're
home.
the scariest person in Seoul. If you marry my mom, you'll be my dad. And dads protect their families. That's what they do.
The bullet shattered the window before Min-jae even heard the shot. Glass exploded inward as he dove behind his mahogany desk, his hand already reaching for the Glock tucked beneath. His heart hammered against his ribs, not from fear, but from the familiar rush of survival. Someone had found him. Someone always did. But when he peered around the desk's edge, weapon raised, he didn't find an assassin. He found an 8-year-old girl with cornrows and wide, terrified eyes, crouched in the corner of his study. She held a rock in her trembling hand. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to break your window. I needed to get your attention." Min-jae slowly lowered his gun, his mind racing through impossible scenarios. His penthouse was 40 stories up. His security was ex-military. There were cameras, motion sensors, and 3 separate checkpoints. And yet this child had somehow materialized in his private sanctuary during his evening tea ritual, the one sacred hour when he demanded absolute solitude. "How did you get in here?" His voice came out harder than he intended. The girl flinched, but didn't back down. She stood up, all 4 feet of her, and squared her narrow shoulders. "I climbed the fire escape. Then I hid in the laundry delivery. Your guards were changing shifts, so I snuck past when they weren't looking." She said it matter-of-factly, like she was describing a trip to the grocery store. Min-jae stared at her. In 20 years of running the most feared organization in Seoul, no one had ever breached his home. Not the Jade Serpent Gang, not the Russians. Not even the corrupt police who occasionally grew bold. But this child had walked through his defenses like they were made of paper. "What's your name?" "Zoey." She took a step forward, her fear giving way to something fiercer, desperation. "And I need you to marry my mom." The absurdity of it almost made him laugh. Almost. But there was something in her eyes, a haunted quality he recognized. He'd seen it in his own reflection after his family was massacred when he was 12. "I don't marry anyone," he said, setting his gun on the desk, but keeping it within reach. "Especially not on the recommendation of children who break into my home." "Please." Zoe's voice cracked. "The bad men are going to kill her. Someone told me that only someone scary and powerful could stop them. So I researched. I went to the library and used the computers, and I found you." She pulled a crumpled printout from her pocket, a newspaper article with his photo. "You're Min-jae. You're the scariest person in Seoul. If you marry my mom, you'll be my dad. And dads protect their families. That's what they do." The logic was childish and pure, and it cut through him like a blade. Before he could respond, his security team burst through the door, weapons drawn. "Sir, we found the breach point." "Leave us!" Min-jae's command was absolute. "But sir—" "I said leave." They hesitated, then retreated, though he knew they'd remain just outside. He turned back to Zoey, who had grabbed a letter opener from his desk and held it like a sword, protecting herself against his guards. Against him, if necessary. God, she was brave. I said, "Where's your mother?" "The Blue Moon Motel on 7th Street, room 23. Zoey lowered the letter opener. "Will you come?" Min-jae should have said no. Should have called child services, had his men escort her home. Forgotten this ever happened. He had enemies to destroy, territories to maintain, an empire built on blood and fear. He didn't have time for desperate children and their mothers. But he thought of his grandmother, who had raised him after his family died, who had taught him the tea ceremony he still performed every night. A ritual of mindfulness and control in a life of chaos. She would have helped this child. She would have been disappointed in what he'd become. "Get your coat," he said. "If you're already hooked by this story, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me where you are watching from. And don't forget to like this video. It helps more people find these stories." The Blue Moon Motel was exactly the kind of place Min-jae expected. Flickering neon, cracked pavement, the smell of cigarettes and desperation. He parked his black Mercedes in front of the room 23, and Zoey practically flew out of the car. Mom, I'm back." The door flew open and a woman appeared. Tall, dark-skinned, beautiful despite the exhaustion etched into her features. Her eyes went wide when she saw Zoey, then wider when she saw Minjae stepping out of his car. Zoey, what did you? Then she noticed her daughter was unharmed, and relief flooded her face. She pulled Zoey into a crushing hug. Where have you been? I've been losing my mind. I was about to call the police. I went to get help, Mom. Zoey pulled back, gesturing toward Minjae. This is him, the man who can protect us. The woman's gaze snapped to Minjae, and her relief transformed into something else. Recognition. Fear. She pushed Zoey behind her and grabbed something from inside the room. A kitchen knife. Get away from my daughter. Minjae raised his hand slowly, showing he was unarmed. Your daughter came to me. She broke into my home and asked me to marry you. She what? The woman's eyes darted to Zoey. Baby, what did you do? I asked him to marry you so he'd be my dad and protect us from the bad men. Zoey peeked around her mother's legs. He's a mafia boss, Mom. He's perfect. Oh my God. The woman's hand trembled, but she didn't lower the knife. We're not criminals. We don't want anything to do with people like you. Then why are you hiding in a motel? Minjae kept his voice calm, non-threatening. Why does your daughter think you need protection from bad men? The woman's composure cracked. Her eyes glistened with tears she was too proud to shed. That's none of your business. Mom, tell him. Zoey grabbed her mother's arm. Tell him about what you saw. About the Jade Serpent gang. Minjae's attention sharpened. The Jade Serpents? The woman, he still didn't know her name, seemed to crumble. The knife lowered. I'm a nurse. I was working a late shift at Seoul General 3 weeks ago. I saw them dump a body in the emergency bay. I saw their faces. I saw everything. Her voice dropped to a whisper. They know I saw. They've been hunting us ever since. The Jade Serpents. Minjae's oldest rivals, the one organization that still dared to challenge his territory. They ran drugs, weapons, and had recently expanded into human trafficking, a line even he wouldn't cross. He'd been looking for a way to destroy them for months, and now their destruction had walked right to his door, hand in hand with an 8-year-old girl. What's your name? He asked. Thandiwe. She said it with defiance, like she was daring him to mock it. Thandiwe, I'm going to be honest with you. The Jade Serpents won't stop looking. They're vicious, thorough, and they have resources. Hiding in motels will only buy you time. He paused. But I can protect you. Both of you. Why would you do that? Suspicion hardened her features. What do you want? Information. Kia, your testimony could help me dismantle their entire operation. He saw her about to refuse and added, but that's secondary. Your daughter had the courage to come to me, to risk everything for you. That deserves respect and protection. Thandiwe looked at Zoey, then back at Minjae. If this is some kind of trap, it's not. He met her eyes. I give you my word. The word of a criminal. The word of a man who keeps his promises. They stared at each other for a long moment. Finally, Thandiwe lowered the knife completely. If you hurt my daughter, I will find a way to kill you. I don't care who you are. I would expect nothing less. Minjae allowed himself a small smile. Pack your things. You're coming with me. The safe house was in Gangnam, tucked behind tall walls and manicured gardens. It looked like a modern mansion, and all glass and steel and luxury. When Thandiwe and Zoey stepped inside, they both froze. This is where we're staying? Zoey's eyes were huge. Temporarily, Minjae gestured for them to follow. There are 3 bedrooms upstairs. Take whichever you like. The kitchen is stocked. My men patrol the perimeter, and the security system is state-of-the-art. You're safe here. Thandiwe walked through the space like she was in a museum, afraid to touch anything. This is too much. We can't. You can, and you will. Minjae's tone left no room for argument. The Jade Serpents have eyes everywhere. They won't find you here. Zoey had already discovered the kitchen and was opening cabinets with increasing delight. Mom, there's ice cream, like 5 different kinds. Despite everything, Thandiwe laughed. It was a beautiful sound, warm and genuine, and it did something strange to Minjae's chest. Zoey, we're guests here. We can't just eat whatever you want, Minjae said, both of you. I'll have clothes and anything else you need delivered tomorrow. Thandiwe turned to him, and for the first time, He saw past the fear and exhaustion. She was stunning, strong, and looking at him like she couldn't quite figure him out. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked quietly. He could have lied, should have lied. Instead, he said, "Because I know what it's like to lose everything. And because your daughter reminds me that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being terrified and doing what needs to be done anyway." Something shifted in Thandiwe's expression. Not trust, not yet, but the possibility of it. "Thank you," she said. Now he nodded and turned to leave, but Zoe's voice stopped him. "Mr. Minjay, will you teach me the tea thing?" He frowned. "What tea thing?" "I saw a tea set in your car, the fancy kind. My friend's grandma does tea ceremonies. Is that what you do?" He should have said no, should have maintained distance. But he heard his grandmother's voice in his head. "Tea is about presence, Minjay, about being fully in the moment. Don't lose that, no matter what life takes from you." "Tomorrow," he said. "If your mother agrees." Zoe looked at Thandiwe with such hope that the woman couldn't possibly refuse. "Okay," Thandiwe said. "Tomorrow." 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of Minjai's carefully ordered life being turned upside down. He'd installed Thandiwe and Zoe in the safe house, meaning to check in occasionally, to keep them at arm's length while he gathered intelligence on the jade serpents. Instead, he found himself there every evening. It started with the tea ceremony. He showed Zoe the proper way to hold the pot, to pour with intention, to bow with respect. She was clumsy at first, spilling water and giggling, but she learned quickly. More importantly, she approached it with genuine reverence. "My grandmother taught me this when I was young," he told her one evening. "She said it was about control, about finding peace in precise movements." "Did you love her?" Zoe asked, her small hands wrapped around a teacup. The question caught him off guard. "Yes, very much." "Then this is like having her with you, right? Even though she's gone?" He looked at this child, this brave, insightful child, and felt something crack in the walls he'd built. "Yes, exactly like that." Thandiwe watched these exchanges from the kitchen, where she'd taken to cooking. She'd insisted on contributing somehow, and cooking was something she could do. Minjay would arrive to find her making jollof rice, or jerk chicken, or American-style pot roast, whatever she could manage with the ingredients available. "You don't have to do this," he told her. "I know." She stirred a pot of stew. "But you're protecting us. The least I can do is make sure you eat something that isn't takeout." The first time she made him sit down and eat a full meal, he almost didn't know what to do. He'd spent years eating alone, usually standing up, often straight from containers. This, sitting at a table with Thandiwe and Zoe, passing dishes, say talking about their days, was foreign territory. "How was your day?" Thandiwe asked him one evening. "Productive." He didn't elaborate. Didn't tell her about the 3 jade serpent operations he'd quietly dismantled, the intel he was gathering, the walls he was building around his enemies. "That's corporate speak for, I don't want to talk about it," Thandiwe said with a knowing smile. "Your mom's really smart," Zoe chimed in. "She can always tell when I'm lying." "I'm not lying. I'm being diplomatic." Same thing. Thandiwe's smile widened, and Minjay found himself smiling back. This became their routine. Tea ceremonies with Zoe, dinners with Thandiwe. Sometimes they'd watch movies. Zoe curled between them on the couch, arguing about which film to choose. Minjay learned that Zoe loved animated movies, but pretended to be too old for them. That Thandiwe talked back to the TV during thrillers. That both of them fell asleep before the movie ended. Thandiwe's head tilting toward his shoulder, Zoe sprawled across both their laps. One night after they'd put Zoe to bed, Thandiwe and Minjay sat in the garden. The soul lights glittered in the distance, and the air was cool. "Tell me about your family," Thandiwe said. "Your real family, before all this." He'd never talked about them, not to anyone. But something about the quiet night and Thandiwe's patient presence loosened his tongue. "My father owned a small restaurant. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. My mother helped run it. I had a younger sister, Haywan. She was 6. He stared at the lights. The jade serpents wanted protection money. My father refused, so they killed them, all of them. They made me watch." Thandiwe's hand found his. Minjae. My grandmother took me in, taught me to survive. But I wanted more than survival. I wanted power. Enough power that no one could ever hurt me again. He looked at their joined hands. I got that power, but I also became the thing I hated. You're not like them, Thandiwe said fiercely. The Jade Serpents kill innocents. You protect people. You protected us. I've done terrible things, Thandiwe. So have I. When he looked at her in surprise, she continued. I've lied to protect Zoey. I've stolen food when we were running out of money. I've wished death on the men hunting us. And we all do what we must to protect the people we love. Is that what this is? He turned to face her fully. Love? She didn't answer with words. Instead, she leaned in, and he met her halfway, and when their lips touched, it felt like something he didn't know he'd been missing. The kiss was soft, tentative, then deeper, more desperate, like they were both starving for connection. When they finally pulled apart, Thandiwe rested her forehead against his. I don't know what this is, she whispered, but I know I feel safe with you. And not just physically safe, like I can be myself. You make me want to be better, he admitted. You and Zoey. You make me remember who I was before the violence, before the hatred. Then be that person. Be the man who deserves my daughter's trust. He kissed her again. And this time it was a promise. The attack came on a Tuesday night. Minjae was in his main office across the city when his phone exploded with alerts. The safe house. Breach detected. Multiple hostiles. His blood turned to ice. He barked orders to his men, already running for his car. The drive took 12 minutes. It felt like hours. When he arrived, gunfire lit up the night. His security team was engaged with at least 8 Jade Serpent soldiers, and more were trying to breach the house itself. Minjae didn't hesitate. He moved like a force of nature, his gun an extension of his will. 2 shots, 2 bodies dropped. 3 more shots, 3 more enemies eliminated. His men rallied around him, their defense tightening. But all he could think about was Thandiwe and Zoey inside. He fought his way to the entrance, now leaving bodies in his wake. Inside, he found them in the panic room he'd installed, a reinforced chamber hidden behind the library. Thandiwe had her arms around Zoey, who was crying. Minjae! Relief flooded Thandiwe's face, but it was quickly replaced by fear. They found us. How did they find us? I don't know. His jaw clenched. But we're ending this. Tonight. Outside, the gunfire was dying down. His men had pushed back the attack, but the message was clear. Nowhere was safe. Not while the Jade Serpents existed. He knelt in front of Zoey, whose tears had left tracks on her cheeks. Hey, look at me. She met his eyes, terrified. I promised I would protect you. Both of you. And I keep my promises. Do you believe me? Yes, she whispered. Good. Because I'm not going to hide you anymore. I'm going to end the people who are trying to hurt you. But I need you to be brave, a little longer. Can you do that? Zoey nodded, wiping her tears. Are you going to fight them? I'm going to destroy them. Thandiwe grabbed his arm. Don't. Don't do something you'll regret because of us. I'm not doing this just for you. He met her eyes. I'm doing it because they took my family once. I won't let them take another. He stood, but Zoey's voice stopped him. Are you coming back? The question hit him harder than any bullet. He turned, knelt again, and pulled her into a hug, something he'd never done before. She wrapped her small arms around his neck and held on tight. I promise, he said. I promise I'm coming back. When he pulled away, Thandiwe was watching him with tears in her eyes. He stood and took her hand, pulling her close. When I come back, he said quietly, I'm going to ask you properly. Not because Zoey suggested it, because I want to. Because you and your daughter have given me something I thought I'd lost forever. What's that? A reason to be better than what I've become. He kissed her forehead. Stay here. Stay safe. And wait for me. Come back to us, she whispered. He left them in the panic room with 2 of his best guards and walked back into the night. Minjae spent the next 48 hours dismantling the Jade Serpent organization piece by piece. He started with their financial operations. Every account frozen. every asset seized through contacts in banks who owed him favors. Then their weapons caches, raided simultaneously by police he'd fed information to. Their drug routes, their human trafficking rings, their safe houses, all of it burned to the ground in a coordinated assault that left the Jade Serpents reeling. But the real masterstroke was Thandiwe. He'd arranged for her testimony to be recorded, backed up, and distributed to multiple media outlets and law enforcement agencies. Her account of the murder she'd witnessed, combined with the evidence Minjae's people had gathered, created an airtight case. The story went viral. Nurse risks everything to expose gang murder. The public outrage was immediate. Politicians who'd been taking Jade Serpent bribes suddenly couldn't distance themselves fast enough. Police who'd looked the other way were forced to act. Within 24 hours, arrest warrants were issued for the entire Jade Serpent leadership. Minjae made sure the arrests happened. Personally. No, he stood in the shadows as the police raided the Jade Serpent headquarters, watching as the men who'd killed his family and tried to kill his new one were dragged away in handcuffs. Their leader, a man named Kang, caught sight of Minjae as they hauled him to a police car. "You think you've won?" Kang snarled. "You're just like us. A criminal, a killer." Minjae stepped into the light. "The difference is, I protect the people I love, you destroy them, and now you'll rot in prison for it." It wasn't everything he'd wanted. A part of him, the dark part that had grown in the years since his family's murder, wanted blood, wanted revenge. But another part, the part that had grown in the weeks with Thandiwe and Zoey, knew that this was better. Justice, not vengeance. A future, not just an ending. When he returned to the safe house at dawn, exhausted but whole, he found them waiting. Zoey saw him first and ran, nearly tackling him with the force of her hug. "You came back. You came back." "I promised, didn't I?" He held her tight. This brave child who'd somehow saved him. Then Thandiwe was there, and he pulled her close with his free arm, the three of them standing together as the sun rose over Seoul. "It's over," he told them. "The Jade Serpents are finished. You're safe." Thandiwe pulled back just enough to look at him. "What about you? Are you safe?" He thought about that. Thought about his life, his empire, the enemies still lurking in shadows. "I don't know, but I know I want to try to be. For you. For Zoey. For us." "Us," Thandiwe repeated, like she was testing the word. Then she smiled. "I like the sound of that." 3 months later, Minjae sat in his penthouse, the same room where this had all begun, preparing for the evening tea ceremony. But this time, he wasn't alone. Zoey knelt across from him, her movements still clumsy, but improving. She'd learned to pour without spilling, to bow with the right degree of respect, to find peace in the ritual. "Like this?" she asked, holding the pot. "Perfect," he said. "You're a natural." "That's because I have a good teacher." She grinned at him. "Dad." The word still made his heart skip. He'd asked Thandiwe to marry him properly, with a ring on one knee in the garden where they'd first kissed. She'd said yes before he'd finished the question. The wedding was in 2 weeks, small and private, just them and a handful of trusted friends. But Zoey had started calling him Dad almost immediately, and he'd never corrected her. And Thandiwe walked in carrying a tray of her homemade cookies, and Minjae felt that same tightness in his chest he'd felt the first time she smiled at him. She wore an engagement ring now, a simple band she'd insisted on, nothing ostentatious, and she'd never looked more beautiful. "Are you two almost done?" she asked. "Dinner's ready." 5 more minutes, Zoey said seriously. "The ceremony requires patience and respect." Thandiwe caught Minjae's eye and smiled. "Of course, take your time." She left, and Minjae turned back to Zoey, who was pouring tea with intense concentration. He thought about the photograph he'd taken from his desk drawer, the one of his original family that he'd kept hidden for years. It sat now on his shelf next to a new photo, Thandiwe, Zoey, and him, smiling at the camera like they'd always been a family. Aye, maybe they had been. Maybe family was less about blood and more about choice, about the people who saw you at your worst and chose to stay, about promises kept and second chances earned. Minjae, Zoe's voice pulled him from his thoughts. Are you happy? He looked at her, this child who'd broken into his home and his heart with equal determination, who'd asked him to marry her mother and given him a reason to be more than what he'd become. Yes, he said, and meant it. I'm happy. Good. She handed him his teacup. Because we're keeping you. He laughed, a real laugh. And for the first time in 20 years, Minjae felt like he'd come home. Later, after dinner, after they'd put Zoey to bed, Thandiwe and Minjae stood on the balcony watching the city lights. She leaned against him, his arm around her waist. No, and he thought about how strange it was that his life had changed because a child broke his window. What are you thinking about? Thandiwe asked. How I almost sent Zoey away that first night. How I almost missed all of this. But you didn't. She turned to face him. You chose to be brave. Just like she did. She's more brave than I'll ever be. I don't know about that. Thandiwe's hand found his cheek. It takes courage to let people in. To risk loving again when you've lost everything. You did that. You're doing that. He kissed her, soft and slow, and thought about the future. About walking Zoey to school. About teaching her not just tea ceremonies, but also how to protect herself. About growing old with Thandiwe, building a life that wasn't about violence or revenge, no, but about something simpler and infinitely more complex. Love. Thank you, he said when they pulled apart. For what? For trusting me. For giving me a chance to be the man your daughter thought I could be. Thandiwe smiled. You already were that man. You just needed someone to remind you. Inside, they could hear Zoey calling for water. Thandiwe laughed and went to help her, and Minjae followed, ready to face whatever came next. Because he wasn't alone anymore. He had a family, and he would protect them with everything he had. Not because he was a mafia boss or a criminal or a man with a violent past, but because he was a father, a husband, a man who'd found his way home. The tea set sat on the counter, ready for tomorrow's ceremony. The window Zoey had broken had been repaired, the glass restored. But Minjae had kept one small shard, a reminder of the night his life changed. Sometimes, he thought, the things that break us open are also the things that let the light in. And as he tucked Zoey into bed and kissed Thandiwe goodnight, Minjae realized that he wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living. Really living. And it had all started with a child's whispered plea. Please marry my mom. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more emotional stories like this one. Drop a comment and tell me what you loved most about Minjae, Thandiwe, and Zoey's journey. Your support means everything. And I'll see you in the next story. The end.